Welcome to Take 5, the place where the leaders in the association landscape come for inspiration and insights.
Welcome to Take 5 Live and the modernization of associations. I'm John Folks. I'm president of Minding Your Business, and we are a strategic agency focused on helping associations grow. Central to that growth proposition, of course, is membership. And today we're going to be talking about the membership model of the future. I'm very fortunate to have with me today Max Susanar. He is the CEO and Chief Strategy Officer of Minding Your Business.
Very fortunate.
So Max, I guess let's start off by asking why this new concept of a model of the future? What's changing about the membership model of today?
Well, I think what we're seeing in the marketplace, and probably a lot of our participants are also seeing it, is that there are a lot of changes that are taking place with regards to the membership model. And so let's look at it twofold. The first is, of course, that membership is a promise to deliver, professional development, networking opportunities, et cetera. So there's benefits to being a member. And so we need to ensure that the association is providing those sorts of member benefits that are going to be most valuable to folks. But there's a flip side of the equation that we need to keep in the mix as well and put in context, is that for decades, membership revenues have been a huge income for the association. A main one. And so we need to look at kind of both those sides of the coin. What we're seeing, though, is there's a lot of change that's taking place in the overall marketplace. So regardless of your profession. So there are things like people are questioning now the value of membership. So what's their ROI? You hear people talk about ROI all the time, because it's not only an investment of money to participate and be a member, but it's also like, well, how valuable is my time, and where am I going to invest my time, and also where am I going to volunteer my time, probably more importantly, since these are member-driven organizations.
We're seeing a lot of differences, obviously, in the competitive marketplace, because there's a number of non-for-profits that are competing. There are for-profits that are competing. We look at technology advances, and now we see, like, wow, I don't even have to physically go somewhere, but I can get a lot of my continuing education credits. I can network with people. I can join different groups, even subgroups like in LinkedIn, et cetera, so I can get my professional. And we're in an age now where there's this drive for customization. I want it when I want it, how I want it, and that expectation is only going to escalate. We're also seeing that there are huge generational differences, and we're going to talk about some of those in just a bit. But as a kind of level setting
for it, we all know the baby boomers and how we learned, and there's much more routine. We grew up in how associations provide those. But then we've got Gen Xers who are kind of transitional, but kind of lean a little bit more towards baby boomers and how they take in information, their need for networking, et cetera.
Yep.
Now, when we talk about millennials, there's a whole, I think we're all getting our arms around millennials. And it's hard sometimes because we generalize a lot, and I don't want to be dismissive of it. But what I do think the takeaway is that we need to understand how they like to learn, how they like to network, where they like to spend their time. And it's a very entrepreneurial segment. It's also, there's a sense of, I want to be part of something valuable. I want to contribute. A lot of those are in much shorter bursts. And now we're starting to see creep on the scene are Gen Zers. And just to clarify, they are also called iGens, like lowercase I, think iPhone, as well as post-millennials.
Oh, wow. More labels.
More labels, but there's more distinctions.
Yeah.
And so just a note to our participants, the Pew Research Institute did a really great study which helps to
identify differences between millennials and post-millennials. And one of the things they're seeing at post-millennials are those born in 1996 or after. So they're 21 right now, kind of at the top end of that scale. What they're seeing is that they're more highly educated, they have different motivations, and so some of these things are starting to surface, and again, they're just getting into the professional workforce, so we'll see some new things there.
Thus, this whole the importance of customization and looking at this kind of the varying demographics of your potential membership,
Yeah.
And of course how they want to be served, I guess, is really important for us to consider as we're looking at membership.
Absolutely. And so when we look at this, there's a couple things with membership, because we're looking for new revenues. We're looking to expand audiences and to get more people to join and engage with our association. So there are some straightforward strategies that we're seeing today. So for example, if you're within a medical society, they've gone from either the physician or the researcher to the whole care team, and they look around, and so they are expanding membership. But of course, you have to also have offerings that are very specific to those folks.
That's right.
So there's a way to take your existing membership base and try to look at what's the professional setting. Can we expand and bring others into our community?
Expanding where it makes sense.
Expanding where it makes sense. We're also seeing a lot of interest and exploration in hybrid models, because again, maybe I don't want to be a full member, or maybe there are some benefits that are more important than others. We're seeing this customized build, like I'm able to really kind of, if you think about it, select from a series of the Chinese menu sort of scenario. I get to choose different options that I want to customize my membership experience. Pay as you go membership. So a lot of things are kind of perking out there. The other thing that I think is an often missed strategy is we don't even know if our association is the primary association they belong to or a secondary. So one opportunity.
Why does that make a difference?
Well, think of it this way. If I have a primary, it's probably fueling me, providing me with professional engagement on all sorts of levels and knowledge for my specific skill set and profession to move forward.
So give them a choice.
If I have a secondary, there's a lot of overlap. We're seeing that today, where the specialties or my profession is divided into two. So I may get some value from having a secondary membership. And so we're seeing that folks are looking at a secondary membership, less fee, less, there are not as many member benefits, but they're still become part of the community for the association.
So when given the choice, if I only have a certain number of resources and time, I'm going to obviously have to select between one or the other.
Right, but it could still bring value. The other thing I want to talk about, we've talked about this before, we need to shift our mindset and think of members as customers. I mean, we're there to serve them anyway.
More of a consumer view.
Or more of a consumer view, absolutely. And so we have a lot of kind of very much blatantly in the open, but we don't really address it, is that you've got a lot of folks, we just did some evaluation on a client and found that over the past 3 years, they've had 100,000 non-members participate in their annual meeting, as an example.
Wow.
So I guess it boils down to, if we start looking at, maybe my path isn't always to membership, maybe it's that transactional model. And so, weigh it out.
Yeah.
If your membership is $400 a year and your annual meeting is $1,200 a year, is it more valuable to have a member at $400 a year that never goes to your annual meeting? Or is it more valuable to have a non-member who goes to your annual meeting once every 2 years at $1,200 bucks? So from a revenue standpoint, we need to take a look at it, but also,
how can we then bring those people that are non-members, and they can engage on so many levels. I mean, they could be tapping your website for insights, they could be participating in a webinar, they could be
purchasing your publications, or for that matter, they could actually be someone who has submitted abstracts who's actually being published, but doesn't have any connection with the association. So there's more suspects out there than you think, than the usual ones.
So let's talk about those products and services that you're offering. And before we do, I just want to remind our audience, if you've got questions along the way, please don't hesitate to submit those, and we'll try to get to those before the end of our program today. But as we talk about products and services, Max, and this whole concept of looking at your members or your audiences as customers, why then is it so important to kind of evaluate all those products and services on a regular basis?
Well, again, kind of put your corporate hat on, if you will. Now, even though we're nonprofits and we're there to serve our members, we also need to have a sustainable model for the association itself. And when we look at that, what we need to be doing is having some sort of metrics on performance of those offerings.
And when you talk about performance, is that satisfaction? Is that importance? Is that, what are the...
That's a good. There definitely are some key performance indicators that you should be looking at. Some things that are predictive of loyalty, et cetera, like willingness to recommend to a colleague or a friend, that sort of thing. But I think there's definitely, we want to understand, and we should pressure test this and track it on an annual basis, really, because you're investing in these assets, staff time, volunteer time, money. We should be looking at our annual meeting, how our webinars are performing, what's important to people, how satisfied are they based on that, how aware are they, how much do they use the products. So there's some pressure testing that needs to take place to ensure we are providing what is most important to our members and our community, and they're finding high levels of satisfaction with that. So what it also identifies, and we acquired that through two ways, through research and through data analysis. Let's think about that. So there are two kind of halves to the equation. Looking at demographic and behavioral data, which is tracked in most AMS systems. So what you're looking for there is, demographics. I'm a male, I'm a doctor, etc. Versus what is my behavior? So that's all the transactions. How frequently do I go to the website, attend the annual meeting, participate in webinars, volunteer as a committee chair? Like, there's all sorts of metrics around that. So you can start to understand some profiles of these folks. But what we want, that provides, it's like, okay, a snapshot in real time, how often they're using the products. You can track both monetary as well as those things that don't cost. And you should know about that. What are those behaviors? The other portion of this that's super important is you want research, and research provides you with attitudinal data, and which is the three together perform quite well. But attitudinal, you can ask on how important are these things? How satisfied? What do I think of the organization? What would I like to see the organization offer that they don't already offer?
So beliefs and perceptions and
absolutely,
all of that.
Absolutely.
That sounds like a much more comprehensive picture of each member if you can demographically identify them, behaviorally identify them, and then attitudinally identify them as well. And you get
look
a
at
much
it,
better picture.
you aggregate that data and you look at that. But the bottom line is, when you're trying to evaluate your membership benefits, lead with your strengths. Like, find out what you're doing well, find out why are people members. And it's important, like, you look at the differences also. We want to take a look at based on who finds that value. So again, it's in this era of customization, all of our thinking can't be one size fits all. We have to customize everything for our participants and our members.
Yeah, and you started off talking about, obviously, some of the demographic information, the differences between millennials and some of the other groups. Obviously, this transcends just that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it adds to that. When we're looking and when we're doing evaluation, we do need to start looking at either career stage or age. And I'm a little hesitant with age sometimes, because as a 50-year-old, I could potentially have just shifted my, I may be late in my career. Yes, I became a cardiologist at 50 instead of at 34. And so we can't always assume that age means longevity within the profession. So career stage is definitely very important to take a look at. And when we take a look and do the analysis on this, and this is a prerequisite, I mean, it really is the wave of the future. As we're talking about the modernization of associations, these kind of strategic dashboards on member benefits is crucial, and we'll see it more and more. And what we need to do there is then understand, as we're doing the segmentation, what's important to different groups. And how do we provide the service offerings that they're looking for in benefits and professional education, et cetera. So, and it also, provides us with, wow, we see, let's say millennials are asking for this, we're not offering it currently. It provides us with an avenue to identify new areas to build revenues. And one word to the wise, whenever you're building new revenues, bring the people that are the potential recipients or stakeholders to the table to help you define it.
Is that like
and
focus groups and surveys?
It could be focus groups, it could be focus group surveys, etc. But make sure that it isn't someone who's well-meaning, like myself, trying to design without any guidance a millennial program.
Makes sense. Right, you want to be able to obviously test run that in front of the potential audience to make sure that you are meeting their needs.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, so when we talk about these different groups and the value of customization and the need today of customizing your products and offerings to each one of your different constituents, your different audiences, how do you balance the needs of your traditional audience, the boomers that so many of us have been used to serving, to these new audiences that you were talking about demographically, Gen Zs, Gen Xs, the iGens. How do we balance the needs of all of those groups, and how do we do that?
Okay, well, first off, and I think as a way to segment, I think it's very important to look at career stage and then to integrate where people are.
So that still is important, even though we have additional information. That's still a foundational way to kind of look at it.
It's foundational, but we also have to look at what do we see in terms of behaviors, trends, expectations from millennials and post-millennials. And again, the post-millennials or Gen Z, we're still learning about them and they haven't quite entered into the professional workforce. But we do know a lot more about millennials. And I think, stop rolling your eyes and like, oh, millennials, they don't, like, I don't believe that.
I wouldn't do that.
No. I'm not saying you're rolling your eyes. I'm talking to the audience. Millennials are bringing extraordinary value, this entrepreneurial spirit, this kind of go-get-em attitude. And I hear some of you out there. I can hear you through the waves saying, "Oh, please!" But there are some great value there. But we need to understand that there are those differences, and then by leveraging, and then we need to test, like with research, what do they want? What do they prefer? Are you currently offering it and meeting the satisfaction levels that they want? And I think that's identifying. Here's what we're promising to you. Here's how we're delivering on that, and thinking in terms of those audiences specifically. So to make sure what you're promising is of value, since that's the biggest portion of membership, is what's the value proposition, and it's tailored to me and how I like to learn and how I want to connect with people, and really focus in on that. The other thing is, again, one size is not going to fit all. So you may have very customized benefits that are very specifically targeted to different groups generationally or in career stage, as an example. And if you think about your annual meeting, so that's kind of, we're trying to get all of our constituents there. Well, a very simple way to take a look at it is, well, why don't you just map the experience? You can glom baby boomers and Gen Xers together. But what is it like for a millennial? Just as you would for a first timer. And does it meet my needs? So what are those things that you're doing to tailor that experience? What the value I'm going to get from that annual meeting? So you have to develop, these kind of parallel universes that are taking place in one environment.
Well, I'd imagine that technology has been a huge impact to kind of the millennial experience at a meeting. Their use of devices, how they are kind of navigating the meeting, how they're finding resources and finding each other.
No question.
It's very different.
And a big part of that has to do with neuroscience, because if you think about it very simply, baby boomers and Gen Xers adopted technology. It came after we had already started school or whatever, or it was
kind of born with it, right? I mean,
now millennials were born with it, and so we're seeing a very different way of taking in how that happens, what's important. And so we need to understand that those are two very foundational differences in terms of how people learn, what the expectations of experiences, et cetera.
So it sounds to me like we need to map the membership journey using technology and making sure that we are, we're integrating the device into that, and how we are kind of showing value, how we're demonstrating value, how we're generating value for these younger, potentially younger members.
Keep in mind, technology is a tool to advance learning, to advance connections, to create without boundaries or
barriers. What those look like. There there's our mascot, Oliver.
Oh, is somebody here?
So I think that's really important. Sorry, I got off track a little bit, but yeah.
So there may be something here for you. Is someone coming to visit you?
Or take me away.
So what advice might you give to associations that are looking to change their model?
Okay, so if there's an exploration, the board's talking about it, you're talking about it internally, a couple of things. One is it's a very significant initiative. And look for outside assistance to make it happen, because you really are going to need data analysis and research in several different forms, competitive analysis, an environmental scan to understand what are disruptors happening in the marketplace, not just the introduction of technology, but things that are very specific to your organization. So again, if I use a medical association as an example, is there something coming up in healthcare and how healthcare, in a much bigger picture, that is going to negatively or positively impact your profession? Totally to understand that. We also need to be very, very careful not to disrupt the experience of those loyal members. Mm-hmm. So the value you're providing, and I'm still getting what I always liked and enjoy it. And for the association, that's a revenue that we do not want to disrupt. So we have to be very cautious about what the transition of that is going to be. So you'll also need to.
But I think that's a really good point, which is, it's not an all or nothing kind of strategy here. It is really an and strategy where, we have to continue to do a lot of the things that we've been doing in order to kind of continue to meet the needs of our traditional core members, but also start to slowly integrate, and maybe not so slowly, integrate new ways of engaging with different and new audiences, younger audiences, for example, and start to offer new kinds of products and services, new kinds of ways to distribute or offer those products and services to make sure that we're meeting their needs. Not at the exclusion of our traditional members, but or in addition to.
No, absolutely, absolutely. The other thing I was going to say is you want to do some comparative analysis, and comparative is not competitive, just for clarification. Comparative is saying, I'm going to look at an association model that, again, let's say that I'm a lawyer and I belong to a legal association. I may want to look at other models that are out there for other professions to see how they've done the changes, what works successfully, what has not. There are some terrific resources out there now as this is kind of perking with a number of associations. So I definitely would recommend that. The other thing is there's some, with this whole, again, it fits with the modernization of associations. We need to start looking at the financial model. So there's a financial modeling that takes place, and we need to develop pro formas. And pro formas, again, and I apologize if you already know, but they project out into the future where we anticipate those numbers to be, both in terms of number of members as well as revenues. And there are assumptions based on data, trends, etc. What we're changing. Yes, what we're anticipating. So we can model it to ensure we don't lose revenue, but we meet our objectives very clearly in terms of getting more people within the community. And again, I would just go back to this whole, as we look at membership, if current members are kind of the premium segment, and a transactional quote unquote member, I'm part of the community. I don't even have to be called member, but we should account for them as part of our community for engagement purposes, for soliciting engagement, as well as purchasing products, services, going to the annual meeting, participating in our webinars, etc.
So looking at that model as, members, I as you were talking, I was kind of thinking of, the dropping the pebble into the water, and you see the concurrent rings that kind of cascade outwards, and where you've got in that central ring, those very loyal members, they're very engaged, they come to your annual meeting, they're involved in committees, etc. And then you've got that second ring of people that may come to the annual meeting only, and that third ring may be people that, maybe members that maybe only attend a webinar. And then that fourth ring may be non-members, but they come to the annual meeting every couple of years. or they engage with you some other way. So that customer base and looking more beyond just the traditional membership to who are my audiences, who do I serve, and what are the products and services that I can either customize or offer new to these other audiences to engage them with me. They may or may not be a member, but they are customers of mine and they are part of my community.
That's exactly right. So we get tripped up with this semantics, and again, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
Like the members, I am a member, I want to be recognized as a member, and here's the value I get. There are those folks, so they're your base, they're your base. So don't be disruptive to them. It's more of it's not either or, it's and we have these segments of people who are customers, they just don't happen to be members, or they have a different type of membership.
But the relationship with them is still valuable to you. It is a revenue stream for you, and you should develop some sort of engagement strategy with them to make sure that you maintain that relationship, that they continue to come to the annual meeting, even if they'll never be a member. And this is probably more important as we look at younger, potentially younger demographics who may not be joining. They may not be as interested in joining an organization, but they are interested in professional resources, products and services that are going to help them be more successful.
No question, no question. I think that what we're seeing again is kind of this burning need for the newer generation, so early career stage professionals. How do we attract more of them to us so that they become part of our community? Now, we run into a little bit of a tricky scenario because associations have different sensibilities on students. They may have a full student track, and of course they're reaching out. But sometimes when you talk, like, for example, at an annual meeting, well, if 25% of your membership base are students, they have a student membership, the exhibitors probably aren't thrilled to have students coming.
That's one constituent, certainly. But
they are the future of your organization.
They're the future of your organization.
Cultivating that relationship, I think, does make sense.
And cultivating it in their terms, how they would like to see engagement. And that's where I think we're going to need to have some more flexibility with this. I'm not interested in paying $400 for my membership fee, but I do want to engage with you, and we need to figure out how do we open our doors to that, where we can provide those things and monetize the things that make sense, like the annual meeting, where it's a revenue driver, and what can we kind of give them, if you will, and create for them in terms of engagement, so that it builds their career and builds their loyalty to the organization.
It's all about value. So
we're just about running out of time, but wondering if you had any questions at all about what we've been talking about here today. Let's see. One of our audience members wants to see Oliver. Let's see, is Oliver here?
Hey, Oliver. Come here. Over here.
Mural.
Oh, look, I love it. Our content is so rich that our mascot,
they're much more interested in seeing Oliver. Well, Oliver is a little shy apparently, because which is very unusual for him.
Well, we want.
But he is definitely the star of most of our shows. So I don't know if there's a way to turn the camera over to see Oliver a little bit.
All right, there he is.
Our chief entertainment officer and of course key watchdog. He does keep an eye on the door to make sure that he saves us from the UPS man, mail lady, or FedEx, and make sure that he is protecting us.
And you're invited to come over and meet him at any time, because he loves company. We've got.
All right. Love the content, but wanted to see Oliver. Oh yes. Okay, good. Glad we got Oliver. How do you recommend an association define the value proposition and ensure it is correct? This can be a long process. Are there recommendations for a quicker path as well? Max, is that something you want to give some thoughts to?
The unique value proposition, because obviously the value proposition has got to be unique as well, because otherwise, if everybody can offer it, you're in a very competitive set. So you need to define yourself as unique. And a simple way of doing that is just a litmus test is, what are we providing to our members that they cannot get anywhere else? Mm-hmm. It could be a certain certification. It could be access to thought leaders that don't they don't go from one community to the next. So, you don't see the same speakers, but they become part
And
of that.
and it could be that community. I know a lot of associations where the central value proposition is, that is my community, whether it be a professional community or one of common interests as well.
For sure. And I think that's where you've got to pressure test to, like, you have innately, here's our value proposition, but you really need to test for it again. And I hate to keep going back, but we're in an era where we can learn things about the people in our community, and we need to ask their impressions. And so
And that's
there
done
again,
through research.
Research, and also you can look at data analysis, but research is the best way to understand and test against, here's our value proposition, and segment it based on either generational gaps or early or stage in your career, etc. So it's not an easy process to do it right. And here's the other thing, you'll come up with an overarching unique value proposition for membership, and then you'll still need to segment and slice it to make it a little more crystallized for people like me that are baby boomers versus someone who is a millennial. So it needs to speak to me and resonate. The one thing that we see, which is not done in surveys a lot of times, is look at the gap between here, what's important to you, ask the variables, and then how satisfied with you are in our performance on what's important to you. What that helps you identify, number one, is what is important, and does it align with what you're thinking and your perceptions are, what the value is that you need to be providing? And then the flip side of it is saying, we're not performing on it, or we're super performing on it, or we're doing just great. And so we have to understand that, because we need to understand what is that unique value that we're providing to our potential audiences and to our members, our current members.
Great. I think we've got another question. Not a question, but thank you, Max, for saying that customers are just as important as members. Yes. All right. Well, I think that's absolutely the truth. And I think that's one of the big messages, I think, of today.
You're very welcome.
For sure.
Last thing is, somebody would like to see, Liz would like to see a example of a strategic dashboard, if we could send that along.
You know what?
Terrific.
We will be happy to
Yeah.
send along an example of a strategic dashboard for those of you. We can show you what some of those metrics would look like. So we will be happy to send that out to you.
Yeah. As part of the follow-up. So
yeah, absolutely.
I don't see any other questions at this point.
And I think we're out of time.
And I think we're out of time. But thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your engagement. We appreciate you being here with us to kind of explore how we can take associations to the next level as we look at modernizing our industry and a profession.
Exactly. And so thanks again. I'm Max Husnar. We'll look forward to seeing you next time as we're going to continue the series on the modernization of associations. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.